Chapter 2. It had been years since I had last been outside of the town. Honestly, it had even been seasons since I even left the college grounds. The main road is paved with sturdy ancient stones which create a checkered pattern of a dark and greyish blue. Due to the city management class I had taken, I knew that the stones had been reinforced by magic way back when this city was first founded. The road was wide enough for 4 carts to pass each other with enough space to walk between, which was good because it was quite full near the city, and I ended up weaving my way through the many farmers, guild workers, and well-guarded merchant caravans, each being pulled by their own unique labour creatures. It was clear that people were taking the news of the deserters seriously. I didn't see anyone without a weapon clearly visible on their person, and more than one looked as if they were forced to use them recently. The corps, my corps, flicked at my mind as I observed the caravans. Our link was faint through the pack and the wrapping around it, more like a whisper at the edge of my awareness, but I could feel its curiosity. When I passed by a particularly gaudy carriage, hauling several large and ornate chests strapped to the top, the corps flooded me with its desire. It didn't have words, but it was clear the little bastard wanted me to take those shinies for ourselves. The carriage driver gives me a strange look as I burst out laughing. The corps pulsed with longing as we passed another caravan, its desire sharp and insistent, tugging at the edge of my thoughts, trying to get my hands to move. I had to shake my head to push it away. No, we're not stealing from the merchants, I mutter under my breath, drawing more strange looks from some passing farmers. I grin at them and wave. They roll their eyes. As the sun began to set, it was just me on the road, which had shrunk down to 2 carts in width. I was passing by farmland that was rich with crops flowing in the wind, each gust flowing through the stalks like waves on the ocean. I let my hand trail through the stalks, brushing against them, as I spoke to the corps, telling it of my time at the college, of the friends I had made, enemies too, of the papers I had written at the last second, of the times I had spent more time figuring out how to cheat on a boring test than it would have taken just to learn the material. The corps didn't understand much, but it seemed to appreciate hearing about my life. Every now and again, I would get feelings of a vast ocean, hunting, surviving. Its mind was difficult for me to pass, but it was good company on the road. I knew the first inn was close, having memorized the general landmarks and stopping points along my route the moment I was assigned my post. It had been a few hours since I last saw anyone, and the sun had set, leaving me to travel under the cool, silver light of the ring. The immense band arched across the sky like a celestial halo, its surface shimmering faintly as it reflected the sun's distant glow. The ring's light was soft and diffuse, bathing the forest I passed through in an ethereal glow that felt both alien and comforting. It was while I was looking up at the ring and the stars beyond that I heard an unpleasant cough, followed by rough laughter. I stopped walking, my gaze snapping from the stars to the shadows ahead. 4 men stepped into the road. My stomach dropped as my training kicked in. I knew if there were 4 in front, there'd be at least 1 behind, the faint crunch of boots on gravel confirming it. The leader, the best equipped and most well-fed-looking member, stood slightly forward of the others and tapped a well-worn bastard sword off of his pauldron rhythmically. He cocked his head to the side, saying, "Looks like we've caught us a sage, boys." His crew laughs, sounding mostly forced to my ears. He spits a foul-looking substance out of the side of his mouth, grinning brown teeth at me. I heard the college gives gold to those who graduate to start them off on their new lives. The corps flares, demanding we fight, its anger a buzzing static that flooded me. For a moment, I see flashes of strange, flailing limbs tearing through the flesh of the soldiers, their screams bringing pleasure as a ravenous hunger pushes against my mind. I clench my fists, digging my fingernails into my palm, forcing the vision away. The leader takes a step forward, mistaking my reaction for fear, nearly at arm's reach to me now, and gestures around to his men. "You help people, right, Sage?" More snickering. This joke seemed to actually amuse the men this time, rather than being an automatic henchman reaction. The leader frowns, looking me up and down. "Doesn't look like you brought much with you. Guess you meant to spend the rest once you got to your new home?" He levels his sword at me, causing the rest of them to display their own weapons menacingly. "Seeing as you're meant to make the world a better place, how about you start with us? Outnumbered, outarmed, if I don't take control of the situation, they'll strip me of everything, if not worse." Old habits die hard, I think, as I straighten my spine and force a grin. Let's see if they still remember their training. I snap a crisp salute, slamming my fist into my chest, shouting in my best sergeant tone, "Ex-auxiliary member Leod J. Faden reporting for duty." The action has the effect I had hoped for. The leader freezes, his sword faltering mid-air. One of the men behind him mutters a curse under his breath, while another takes a nervous step back as they recognize not only a fellow soldier, but one of the healers. I press on, taking off my pack and pulling out my pots and pans, as well as all the food I had been given by the turtle. "I'll get some stew going, and then we can take a look at your wounds." I toss a small bundle of dried meat to the leader, who scrambles to catch it with his free hand. At the same time, I sweep up the goods in my arms and push forward. Each step feels like a gamble, but I force myself to move casually. The men part reluctantly, their eyes darting between me, the food, and their leader. One of them tightens his grip on his blade, and for a moment I thought he might lunge. But I don't stop. I just set my things down and begin stacking stones to get a fire pit going. I call out as I work, "I'll need wood if we're going to eat tonight." My voice was calm, authoritative, leaving no room for argument. I strike flint to steel, coaxing a small flame to life. The smell of burning kindling fills the air as I begin to pour water from my canteen into the cooking pot and arrange the meagre ingredients I had brought with me for preparation. The men don't move at first. The silence stretches, tense and brittle, until one of them, a boy, barely old enough to hold a mace, steps forward with a bundle of gathered wood. I accepted it with a nod, as if there was no question they would follow my orders. I look at him kindly as I add the wood to the small fire, coaxing it to life. And as I place the pot over the flames, I say, "Thank you, soldier." His mask breaks. Where there had been a rough and angry bandit was now a hungry lost kid. I could smell rot on him. Whatever it was bad. I say, quietly but firmly, "Let me see your wound, soldier." The boy hesitates, glancing at the others for support. I didn't look up to see their reaction, keeping my hands steady as I prepared the ingredients for the stew. I could still see the leader, though, and his eyes narrowed. He seemed to be debating with himself whether I was a threat to his command, his grip on the sword, clenching and relaxing as he watched me move. Behind him, some of the men glanced at the boy, then at the pot, the conflict written on their faces. They were waiting, watching, for one wrong move that would break the spell. As I busied myself with the stew, feeling their eyes on me, my hands worked quickly, cutting meat and cheese, sprinkling in spices, each motion deliberate and calm. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the boy slump to the ground, his shoulders sagging as he begins taking off his boots. The smell hits me first, a rancid mix of rot and sweat that had once made my stomach turn before I got used to it while in the king's army. The gash on his foot was deep and angry, pus leaking through the crude wrapping he'd tried to bind it with. I place a lid on the pot, allowing it to simmer over the fire, and mutter, "It's a wonder you can walk at all." I reach back in my pack and pull out a small bottle of alcohol, using it to clean off the cooking knife. I look up at him. This is going to hurt. A lot. But it'll feel better after. The boy nods, taking out his mace and biting down on the handle. I can feel the other men gathering around us as I pour the alcohol over the wound, the boy's body jerking as he clamps down harder on the mace, his screams muffled in his mouth. I hold him steady with a firm and practiced grip. Then, knowing I had to clear the wound of infection before I could use any magic, I used the few clean cloths I brought to clean the rotted flesh. The boy's skin paled as I worked, his breaths quick and shallow, but he managed to stay conscious and mostly still, despite the pain. Around us, the bandits, no, the soldiers, began to stir. One stepped forward to take the bloody cloths to a nearby stream to wash, another stirred the pot, and for a moment we were no longer strangers, but a unit, working together to keep one of our own alive. Once I had cleared out the wound and cut away the rotted flesh, I closed my eyes, channeling the energy within me. The pull was draining. It always was, as a thread of my essence weaves into the boy's body. The flesh of his foot begins to knit itself together, one layer at a time, the wound becoming smooth and healthy under my hands. Once I was done, my limbs were feeling heavy, and my breath was coming in shallow gasps. But when the boy flexed his newly healed foot, and his face broke into a beaming smile, well, that made it all worth it. I take a moment to look at the men around me. They exchange glances, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. I force a smile and say, "Who's next?"